It's Tuesday, September 17th, and this is the Daily Medical News, where we bring you the day's top medical headlines, plus an in-depth look at today's biggest story. I'm Molly Collegio.
And I'm Nick Andrews. Today, new European cholesterol guidelines set new lows for LDL targets.
How conversation style can boost HPV vaccination rates.
4 antibiotic classes are driving hospital-acquired C. diff cases.
And the rates of off-label prescribing for children continue to rise.
Plus, states are passing a record number of laws to reel in drug prices, but will federal lawmakers follow their lead?
The new European Society of Cardiology guidelines set an LDL cholesterol target of less than 55 milligrams per deciliter for very high-risk people. It's a Class 1 recommendation, and it's the first time a medical society has either recommended an LDL target goal below 70 or endorsed treating patients to still lower cholesterol once their level was already under 70. The ESC released the guidelines during its annual Congress. But that's not all. The guidelines also suggest considering an LDL target of 40 in very high-risk secondary prevention patients who've already had at least 2 atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease events during the past 2 years. To reach those goals, the guidelines elevate the PCSK9 inhibitors to a top-tier Class 1 recommendation for secondary prevention in very high-risk patients who don't reach their LDL cholesterol goal on a maximally tolerated statin plus ezetimibe. That recommendation stands in contrast with the 2018 AHA-ACC guideline, which deemed the addition of a PCSK9 inhibitor only a Class 2 recommendation. For a complete rundown on the new ESC guidelines, click the link in the podcast notes.
A majority of primary care physicians recommended the HPV vaccine to children aged 11 to 12 years and older, and about half of them said they take a presumptive style when recommending the vaccine to parents. Those are the findings from a survey of 530 pediatricians and family physicians by researchers at the University of Colorado and Children's Hospital in Colorado in Aurora. Their findings appear in the journal Pediatrics. Presumptive style uses words that convey an assumption of vaccination. It doesn't involve discussing the HPV vaccine in a different manner than other adolescent vaccines. In contrast, a conversational style engages parents in an open-ended discussion about HPV vaccine without presupposing vaccination. Significantly more pediatricians than family practitioners reported using a presumptive style when discussing the HPV vaccine. Overall, 40% of the survey respondents used standing orders for HPV vaccination, and 42% had an electronic alerts in patients' medical records to prompt an HPV vaccine discussion. Factors associated with a 50% or higher refusal or deferral rate among 11 to 12-year-olds included not strongly recommending the vaccine and not always using a presumptive recommendation style.
The use of 4 antibiotic classes designated high risk was found to be an independent predictor of hospital-acquired Clostridioides difficile infection, or CDI. The findings are based on an analysis of data from 171 U.S. hospitals. The study appears in the Journal of Infection Control and Hospital Epidemiology. The high-risk antibiotics classes were 2nd, 3rd, and 4th generation cephalosporin, fluoroquinolones, carbapenems, and lincosamides. After adjusting for significant confounders, the use of high-risk antibiotics were still independently associated with significant risk for hospital-acquired CDI. For every 100-day increase of days of therapy per 1,000 days present in high-risk antibiotic use, there was a 12% increase in hospital-acquired CDI. We'll be back with more medical news after this message.
Welcome back to the Daily Medical News. I am Nick Andrews. Doctors continue to prescribe off-label drugs for children, with rates increasing over a 10-year period from 2006 to 2015. That's despite recent legislation to encourage pediatric clinical trials and increase the number of drugs approved for children. Researchers at Rutgers University in New Jersey focused on 141 drugs that are predominantly or exclusively used in systemic formulations and that had been ordered at least 30 times. They found that at least one off-label systemic drug order occurred in nearly 19% of the 1.7 billion estimated ambulatory pediatric visits in the 10-year period. That's 41 million off-label orders per year. The primary reason for a drug being considered off-label was that it was for an unapproved condition. Nearly 3/4 of off-label prescriptions met that criterion. Other reasons included patient age and patient weight. But off-label is not synonymous with off-evidence, cautioned Dr. Caitlin Yackey of the University of Kentucky Children's Hospital in Lexington and Dr. Rachel Stanley of Nationwide Children's Hospital in Columbus, Ohio. In an accompanying editorial, they emphasized the need for more clinical trials for medications for children. You can find a link to that editorial and the original article in the show notes.
Whether Congress will act this year to address the affordability of prescription drugs remains uncertain, but states aren't waiting. So far this year, 33 states have enacted a record 51 laws to address drug prices, affordability, and access. That tops the previous record of 45 laws enacted in 28 states set just last year. Those findings are from the National Academy for State Health Policy, a nonprofit advocacy group that develops model legislation and promotes such laws. Among the new measures are those that authorize importing prescription drugs, screen for excessive price increases by drug companies, and establish oversight boards to set the prices that states will pay for drugs. And more laws could be coming before year's end. Of the handful of states still in legislative session, including California, Massachusetts, Michigan, New Jersey, Ohio, and Pennsylvania, debate continues on dozens of prescription drug bills. In New Jersey alone, some 20 proposed laws are under consideration. It's been a bipartisan push in state legislatures, with Democrats and Republicans backing bills to tame drug costs. But experts note states only can go so far in addressing rising drug prices. Federal legislation is necessary to have a major effect on the way the marketplace works. Hemi Tawarson is a director of health programs at the National Governors Association. She says federal lawmakers are keeping a close eye on state initiatives to gauge where legislative compromise may lie. But political divisiveness, a packed congressional schedule, and a looming election year could stall momentum at the federal level. Priscilla Vanderveer is a spokeswoman for the Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America. She says the pharmaceutical industry has opposed most, though not all, state bills. Many states have passed bills that look good on paper, she contends, but that pharmaceutical makers don't believe will save consumers money. And that's it for today's Daily Medical News. You can find us wherever you listen to podcasts, from Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts to Pandora and YouTube. For MD Edge, I'm Molly Collegio.
And I'm Nick Andrews. Thanks for listening to the Daily Medical News by MD Edge.